Okay, we can start.
All right, so today we'll be dealing with table calculations. Now, table calculations are nothing but some pre-written calculations in Tableau which we get through SQL. Now, what happened earlier was, even for the normal calculations like rank or YOY or YTD, MTD, percentage, we had to write calculations.
Yeah.
And it was becoming difficult for Tableau users to work with Tableau, because once you get into calculation, it becomes a little technical stuff. And tomorrow when we'll be dealing with calculations, you'll see there are a few things that you have to keep in mind and get the functions correct, get the formulas correct, so that you have a valid formula, and then the SQL can run on that. So people were finding it difficult to work with Tableau when it came to calculations. So what Tableau decided was to give them the common formulas pre-written. Now, the more you make things easy for everybody, the more complicated it becomes. So there are few drawbacks of table calculation, and people say that it's not very user friendly, but we'll see where are the drawbacks and where we have to focus on, so that we can make table calculations easier for us to work on. And trust me, if you get your table calculations correct, it's one of those features in Tableau that you understand well, like your blend. Like I said, that if you understand the concept well, it becomes easy for you to take a shorter route as compared to all the others who sit down to write calculations. Also, these calculations are very trustworthy. That means they do not fail, and we don't have issues with at the server level. They reduce the size of our workbook, increasing the performance at the server level. And at the time when the multiple refreshes run, it becomes easy for the user to stick to the calculation that we have done. So table calculations are computations that are applied to the values in the table. Now, what do I mean by values in the table is, table calculation happens on your visualization. Okay, so now we have seen our data pane in Tableau, the left side, where we were getting all the fields. That was our data pane, and our visualization was our detail shelf, our rows and columns at the center part, that is called the sheet. Okay,
yeah.
So anything that is happening on these places is where we can result our table calculations on. Now, people say that you do not have a, you do not get a reusable field, and each time you have to redo your table calculation, but we can fix that through a workaround. But once you have done the table calculation and you're sure that it is computed correct, you can store it for your future use. Storing table calculation for the future use was not possible in the older version. Now, table calculation is a transformation you apply to the values of a single measure. So just give me 1 minute. Just let me open the notepad for me so that I can jot down the points there.
Okay.
So for us, we have to remember, for table calculation, the first thing is it happens on visualization. That means first you have to decide what is the type of your what are your dimensions and measures that you are going to use in the visualization. Now the measures, the dimensions and the measure, and then what type of visualization you're going to create. The second thing that we have to keep in mind in table calculation is you can have multiple dimensions, but only a single measure. So Table calculations do not happen on two measures together. There has to be a single measure on the sheet, and then only we can perform a table calculation on that. So moving ahead, we have the option of, because it's a calculation that we are doing, you will notice that in Tableau, when you actually sit down to write calculations, you can even write calculations for your dimensions. But always remember that table calculation always happens only on measure, and that too only on single measure. You can have multiple types of calculations on a single measure, but you can't have a dimension in the calculation. There always has to be a measure. There are two ways of adding a table calculation. You have an option of add table calculation or quick table calculation. Both of them are same. There's no difference between those, but we'll see each of these. Now, there are few things that I would want to point here is, the third point is we can have multi-calculations.
What do you mean by multiple dimension but only a single measure? You mean in each calculation we should have just a single measure? We cannot have calculation with two measures in same formula?
Yes, it is like you can go for a running total of profit and a percentage difference of profit on the same sheet.
Okay.
But you can't go for a running total of sales and a percentage difference of profit on the same sheet.
Oh, so in each sheet I just have one calculation
You have only one measure on a sheet. So you can't go for a sales and a profit table calculation together.
Okay, but what about, for example, in a single calculation, I use two measure, I cannot?
Yes, that's that's a normal calculation. Like, see, the formula for profit ratio is sales divided by profit.
Yeah.
Right? Now we have sales as measure 1 and profit as measure 2.
Okay.
So there are two measures. So this will happen through normal calculations.
Okay.
But if we are looking for something like the YOY, right?
Okay.
Now the year-over-year growth in sales. So this will happen on one sheet. And if you're looking for year-over-year growth on profit, that's going to happen on your second sheet. You can't put your sales year-over-year and your profit year-over-year on the same sheet. That's not possible.
Okay, can we have, for example, sales for years and sales for months and sales for weeks on a single sheet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So once we have done the table calculation, the measure starts showing a delta or a small triangle next to it. So what do I mean by this is, once we apply a table calculation in the detail shelf or anywhere in your rows and columns, your sum of sales will be showing with a small triangle.
Okay.
That's how we identify that, okay, there's a table calculation that's happening on this sheet. Now, this identification that we are doing for the table calculation is not for the client or not for the end user. They are not interested in whether it's a table calculation or a normal calculation. It is we who are, as developers, who are interested on what type of calculation it is. And also what happens is when your workbook goes to the server and you when you face issues like performances, like your query is running slow, That time you will see that we talk about increasing the performance and we get a red alert for table calculation. Through this triangle sign, we identify that on which particular sheet do we have table calculation and how can we rectify it.
Okay.
Right, so this is another window of our table calculation. It's through add table calculation. The earlier one was through quick table calculation. All right, but we'll be seeing these in Tableau. Now this is very important for us. Now there is a sorting that is done in Tableau. I know I have right now I just it's a very small concept. I've just skipped it, but while doing the table calculation, I'm going to talk about sorting. Now, what happens is in Tableau, you have one-click sorting that is in your axis or on your top tooltip. So when we do one-click sort, the that's not a very reliable sort. What do I mean by not very reliable sort is at the server level, we are not confident that that sort is going to fail, especially when a workbook has various table calculations. Then this one-click sort, that is your axis sort or your top tooltip sort, may work fine when you're working with running total, percentage of total, or when you're finding out the difference from a particular time. But your table calculation, which is talking about averages, difference from previous, percentage difference, all these calculations always fail your one-click sort. Now, when we are taking up the theory, it becomes really easy for us to pinpoint the areas where the sort works and where the sort doesn't work. But when you actually sit down to work in Tableau, it's not easy for us to remember all these small basic things. But these play a very important role at the time of Tableau performance. So rather than worrying about when it is working and when it's not working, we'll always get into a habit of sorting our dimensions through our dialog box. And
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. So this like sort is not working on calculation. It is just working on
Table calculations, yes, it fails.
Okay.
So when you're working with flat files and when you're doing the development, you'll feel that it's working fine. It's okay. But the moment it goes to server and then things start getting automatic or automated, then we face an issue.
Okay.
Filters. Once we have created a table calculation on any of a measure, we can even use it in the filter shelf, and it works like any other field in Tableau that we have dropped in the filter. Okay, so there's no difference. Like I said earlier, in the lower versions, we couldn't store the table calculation, but now you can add the table calculation in the filter. You can add it in the sort. You can even add it as in your data pane as a reusable field. So we'll go ahead and see the different types of table calculations. Along with that, I'm going to, towards the end, I'm going to, or maybe today also, that's fine. I want to share some study materials with you. So these study materials, because I've not covered all the topics, I don't prefer sharing it because you unnecessarily get confused if you try to do your own study and when I'm explaining it. I'm just going to drop you the table calculation study material and the topics that I have covered with you so that you can just go through it and read it. Those are some materials that I still use till date. Because, like I said, table calculation are pre-written. The most frequent ones I'm going to talk about now. We're going to see it through hands-on. But there could be very complicated scenarios. Maybe not in your initial stages, but once you have worked around 2 years or 3 years in Tableau and you are dealing with lots of data sets together, lots of data sources together, or you have ended up in a finance sector that's exhaustively using Tableau. In those cases, you may want to find the table structure in a different manner so that you want the table calculation to happen down and across and down and all those things. So that PDF is going to give you an idea about all the different ways in which you can create a table calculation. Okay, so you can find some time and just go through it, and then we'll discuss about it later. But
Okay, so you sent me another PDF on calculation.
yes, but right now that's not important. If you ask me when should you go through it, I would suggest you first do your entire hands-on that we have covered today. All right, just get acquainted with it. Table calculations, parameters, and level of detail. These three topics take time to sink into your mind. These are a little complicated. In one go, you may find it difficult. So at least do a repeated hands-on, like try to go through it, the entire thing twice, and then you can go through the PDF. All right. Now, before I go to the exercises, there are a few more things that I would like to point out for our understanding. Just give me 1 minute, please. It's just getting dark here. So, okay. Few more points from my side to help you understand table calculation better. Like we have dealt till measure starts showing with a delta sign next to it, we can have multiple calculations on a single measure. Along with this, whenever you have, now till the time we have a single dimension and a single measure in the visualization, we don't have to worry about any other thing. Like you can just drag your dimensions and measures on the sheet, decide what type of table calculation you are going for, or what is the calculation that you are looking for, and then you can go ahead and add your table calculation. But the moment you start having multiple dimensions in a sheet, then your two concepts of compute using, and the second one is relative to, starts coming into picture. Now, what do I mean by compute using? So this is E here. Now, what do I mean by compute using is, compute using is nothing but a dimension on which I want the calculation to happen. Now, what do I mean by this is, imagine I have a, let's take an example of subcategories rank. Okay, now if I want to rank all my subcategories according to sales, in this case, I'm going to have just one dimension that is a subcategory, and the second and the measure is sales. So I don't have to worry about compute using or relative to. But imagine this scenario that I have region, subcategory, and sales. All right, and I want to rank my subcategories as per the sales happening in each region. Okay, so here I want to rank the sales that I'm getting from the subcategories, that is my dimension 1, on the basis of say region, that is my subcategory, that is my dimension 2. So whenever we have multiple dimensions in a sheet, we have to check our compute using. And relative to, we can check when we have dates in picture. Okay, then we have to check our relative to component, because we would want one part of the calculation to happen on a single dimension and the second part of the calculation to happen on dates. If our visualization is not having dates but just two uh, dimensions, like I earlier mentioned, region and state, then we don't have to, then we will not even get an option of relative to. This relative to option only comes when you have dates in picture. Then the next thing that we have to remember is that since the table calculation is happening on the whiz, even a small change like our sort changes, or I'm going to put the word corrupt over here. So even once I've decided that, okay, I'm going for bars, and uh, then I create a horizontal bar. Then I decide and I do my table calculation. Then once I'm done with the entire visualization, I decide that, okay, no, I didn't want a horizontal bar, maybe a vertical bar would be better. And then we swap our axis with Control W. Please remember, even your swapping or sorting of your dimensions may change your table calculation. So it should happen as the last thing that you are doing on your sheet. Okay, then the 8th point, which is very important for us, is the concept of table, pane, and set. Plays a very important role in table calculation. Okay, so I'm going to explain this concept in detail. Let me just create a visualization so that I can do